Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. This is Nick Bubitz with Veriphase. Today we'll be doing a brief walkthrough of the ADT Pro ScanCheck module. It's really a great tool that can be used by everyone from experts in phased array, actually doing the analysis, to the untrained person that might be receiving phased array services but needs a tool that can help them determine that the services they're being provided are of good quality, code compliant, that kind of thing. We've actually set up an actual field scenario to examine a common issue that we see quite often. So we have 100 tube welds that we've gathered from an actual job. These are very thin welds, as you can see. The total amount of data is about 780 megabytes, so just under a gigabyte. And this is a common problem we see for somebody receiving phased array services. They really have two options today. To get that data audited and make sure it's good quality data, code compliant, all those good things. The first one is you can hire a third-party quality assurance or level 3 type service. Obviously that comes with a cost. Also there's time to upload and download the files. The bigger the file, the more time that's going to take. Then you got to wait for the results depending on the schedule of your consultancy company and what their other workload looks like. Another common thing that we do see is you can actually train a member of your own staff to do the audit. Maybe on a periodic basis, they open X number of files and check for some things they've been trained to do in a classroom. That obviously takes a base level of training experience, and as some of the training partners out there have offered that kind of class to give you at least an ability to do that. But a lot of those people, we know that they have other roles within the company. It's not common that somebody is hired to be a full-time auditor of just auditing phased array data. So that does take time away from their other roles. And depending on what you got going on in your plant or your production facility, that might not be convenient. So we really created ScanCheck that with almost no knowledge of phased array data, we wanted to have a tool that could be used very efficiently to do large numbers of welds and give you a good quality report based on digitally processing that data and looking for certain things. So we'll go into those details as we go on. So I'm just going to go right into this scenario. Again, we got this from a current ADT user that actually did these over in Europe. So I'm going to open the ADT program here. Give it a second to open. You can see all the different suites we have in there, each one having a different effect, different use for the phased array workflow inspection. We're going to focus on the ScanCheck module today. So if you just have a single weld, you really need to process really quickly. You can go to the single weld. I'm actually going to go to the batch ScanCheck. One of the things that's great about this, if you watch as I go through, it really doesn't take any data input by the operator, so I don't really have to know what those welds were ahead of time. You know, I look at the names and maybe I know their boiler tubes, maybe I know their thickness, maybe I don't, depending on if I've looked into them or not. And there's really no limit on the number of files for ADT that we can add in here. It's really left to your computer memory and some other items, but it really doesn't take a supercomputer to do this as well. So I'm going to grab all these welds. Again, it's 100 welds. These were acquired on the OmniScan MX2. Let's give it a second. You'll see that it's going to add each file individually, and you can see the list being populated as it does that. So we'll just give it a second to do that. It shouldn't take very long. It's up to about halfway right now. And about 3/4 done. All right, so we have our list of welds all added in there. I'm going to go ahead and hit start scan. So here we have kind of a dashboard we've set up. Some of our clients have indicated, I know there's a bunch of essential variables that go into phased array, but for one particular job, you might be interested in certain essential variables that might be more important to you. So that's what we've done here. You can see the 3 different tiers. We can actually set up a 9 item specifics. We're going to end up reporting a large number of essential variables to make sure that they were accurate and that they're reported correctly for the code. But this gives you kind of something that goes on the top of the report. So we'll look at that a little bit as we go. I'm just going to go ahead and start, and we'll highlight that on the report. So we can see a very similar process to loading the file there. It's just going to go through each one and process them. You can take in about a second or two per file to do that. These aren't terribly large phased array files, 2 to 3 inch diameter, so talking about 9 inches of scan, probably with some overlap to make sure you're over 100% coverage. But the process is very efficient regardless. This just happened to be a good job to highlight, because we had an actual job where this was used and a large number of the same type of files that were required in the field. This job was over 1,608 boiler tubes done in about 8 days. So we're taking a small sampling of them. We were able to do about 200, 300 using several of the ADT modules. So here, after we got done processing all 100 of those files, what we've come up with here is the actual ADT report. So this is our base output for the ScanCheck process. It's pretty simplistic. It's in Excel so that you can manipulate it however you want, take elements out of it. But what we've done, we can see here, is we've actually come up with our own metric for data quality. So we consider things like data dropout, couplant loss, some of the code specific issues that they highlight, like no 2 data dropouts within an inch, no adjacent, and then a percentage scale as well, all referencing from mainly the US based codes, AWS, API, ASME. So we got kind of some quick stats over here. I can see I had 200 total groups. They actually ran a coupling check, and then they had a single-sided access on this. And then 100 total files. And then we get the breakdown in both percentage and number of how many had no quality issues detected by ADT, which is a large predominance of them. Moderate, which is the middle scale there. So that means you had some level based on percentage of scan of data dropout loss of couplant, but you didn't have any of the code specific completely outlawed issues of 2 data dropouts in a row, 2 adjacent. And then severe, to fall into that category, is one of those code specific issues or a percentage that is too high. Let me just go down through this. We actually have an individual listing of each file. We have some of the dashboard stuff that we set up that you said was important to you or most important to you. So that's kind of highlighted on this first overview page. But really what we're looking for here is look for the data quality issues. We can see a bunch of nones. We got a couple moderates there. So those were the ones reflected up above. As I scroll down, I can see at the very bottom, aptly named. See if we could find that needle in a haystack, and ADT did. We actually have a severe data quality. I can also tell by the dashboard immediately that the parameters changed. So if this was all supposed to be the same job, I might suspect he had to make a change. He accidentally put the wrong file into my job lot that was actually from a different job, and for some reason it got given to me as a deliverable as part of my data. So that's another good thing to have the dashboard. We can see the discrepancies, all these files having the same relative parameters, and this one sticking out with a different probe, a different thickness, that kind of thing. So the overview is really just to get the big glimpse of the 100 files, what the overall condition is. If I go to the ScanCheck batch, we have about 70 essential variables that we're able to extract from the file automatically. Now these are things that the code requires. Obviously there's some things, some of the codes require that we're not going to be able to capture. You're going to have to encompass those into your reporting, but anything that we can pull out of the digital file, we're going to do it. So we can see things like instrument parameters, different part details, the weld details, the probe manufacturers. Some of these are coming back NA if they didn't have a probe ID, that kind of thing. But anything that we're able to pull out of there, we're going to. We even have our own things that we make sure get put in there that we often see get overlooked, that the code wants to see, like the manufacturer recommended sweep for the wedge you've selected, gap, that kind of thing for the probe. You can just see there's an exhaustive list of the type of data that we can digitally extract. And this is really good for two things. One, it does it automatically, make sure it gets done, make sure it gets done efficiently. You don't have to open 100 files, manipulate them to see if there's any data loss. Loss of coupling especially can be hard to determine. And then to make sure that these parameters are all accurately recorded properly so that you know you're code compliant. And you can also find some of those discrepancies that might not have been reported while you change something here or there. And then we've kind of created this severe only tab. So we had the one file, two groups that actually came back. ScanCheck detected a severe condition, so we highlight that onto its own page. So you can print it out, bring it to your contractor, or bring it to your guy doing the inspections and say, hey, we might have to redo this one. Make sure we don't get any data loss of couplant, and then we can close this job up. We just see the severe quality there. Obviously, if there's more files, we'd have a whole listing that we can use however we need to. And then we have the micro details, which is really a good showing of the kind of things that we're looking for. So as far as data dropout and loss of couplant, ADT ScanCheck populates the total percentage of the scan, which is the code language. So if you have X inches of scan, we're going to tell you how much of that included data dropout, loss of couplant, whether or not you had very specific code issues like 2 data dropouts per inch or adjacent data dropout lines next to each other. And then we get the real micro. So every instance of ScanCheck that they detected, we're going to have the actual issue, whether it's a loss of couplant or a data dropout, its start point, its end point, and its length. These red highlighted ones are obviously the severe ones that we want to avoid in order to be code compliant. So we highlight those to bring your eye to them. If you're really more of a visual person, we also produce C scans, B scans. There's some options in there in the report, but you can see the light gray here being instances of loss of couplant, and then the black lines being data dropout where the scanner actually moved too fast. So again, it really saves a lot of time and energy. It makes sure everything's accurate. It makes sure that you don't have to open 100 files to know that none of them contain data loss or data dropout. The right files are all in the job folder. Just a real efficient process and a great addition to the ADT Pro workflow enhancement tool.